actually, I'll first just quick background on myself and Ron. I'll let Ron introduce himself in a second. In my previous life, before starting and co-founding Hubly, I actually worked in the robo-advisory space. And so in my role there, I built technology to bring efficiency to and automation to investment advice. But basically started Hubly with the mission 2 years ago is, can we bring more efficiency and productivity to advisory teams and comprehensive financial planning? And I'll let Ron introduce himself and I'll go over the agenda for the day.
Awesome. Thanks, Louis. As Louis mentioned, my name is Ron. I'm one of the other co-founders here at Hubly. And on the day-to-day, really my role here is to make sure that every advisor and all their support staff are successful with our product. That means I started the process with every advisor to understand challenges, to understand the bottlenecks that their business faces. And really over the past 3 years, I've been working with every single one of the firms that uses our product to help them overcome these operational challenges and really scale their business. That's what I do in the day-to-day. I also work with our engineering team to lead the product, and my background comes from computer science and information systems management. So it was a good fit for what we do here at Hubly for the financial advisory space.
Awesome. Thank you, Ron. Quick agenda. So what we're going to be going over first and foremost is the major challenges we've witnessed with the tax preparation processes at advisory firms. We're then going to do a workshop on the best practices. And ultimately, we're going to leave a lot of time at the end just for open floor Q&A. Ultimately, Ron and I are here to learn from you guys and to share what we've learned from our growing community of advisors. And we want to continue working on our mission to make advisory teams more productive. And so any knowledge that you guys can share through this workshop will be much appreciated as well. We're always looking to improve as a team. And so the quick overview on what we've seen from our community of advisors is that when it comes to tax preparation, is that a lot of our advisory firms are trying to find a way to increase share of wallet of their customers, essentially trying to provide additional services in order to continue competing against lower cost alternatives and to really differentiate themselves and add additional value to their customers. And so what we've seen is that tax preparation is one of those opportunities. However, as you guys know, tax preparation can be quite tedious and actually completely creates bottlenecks and destroys your bandwidth in Q1 from basically doing anything else with your business. And so today we're going to mainly be focusing on how you can create more effective tax preparation workflows that are going to help you preserve a capacity in Q1 so you can continue to actually grow your business, even though you're providing this service to existing clients. And so for a start, just to see where the room is at, I'm going to do a quick Zoom poll, just quick 4 questions. If everyone can take just a couple minutes to answer those, that way we can gauge how everyone currently manages their tax prep, and that way we can make sure we personalize the best practices that we share. Just going to launch the poll here quick. Awesome. Can everyone see the poll there?
Yes, but it's not asking for the question. It's showing the total results.
Yeah, it's showing us the results, Louis. So
mine's showing correctly.
Mine was correctly too.
I can relaunch it.
Mine just disappeared. Oh,
There you go.
Apologies for that.
Oh, I think it depends on if you're set up as an attendee or as a, yeah, there we go.
Awesome. Yeah, I got responses coming in. Awesome. Look like we got majority of people, a couple more.
Yeah, we're just waiting on 2 more.
Awesome. I think we'll call it at that. We got the large majority of people. Let me share the results quickly. Awesome. So just to walk through those, looks like about a third of the room is actually offering tax preparation services in-house. But looks like the other half are actually collaborating with a external tax preparer. And we'll share the best practice we'll be sharing will be able to be usable for both of those. Looks like most people are keeping track of their tax preparation tasks, either via their CRM or a task manager of sorts, or large majority of people aren't tracking the tasks.
We also got a chat response there saying that Ryan uses ProConnect Tax Online as the workflow management tool for tax prep.
Got it. Awesome. And looks like most people have a team in-house that's collaborating on the tax preparation service. Cool. I'm going to stop sharing there. I then wanted to just quickly open it up to the floor. And if anyone's willing to comment, are there any major challenges anyone's wanting to share for the tax preparation process that they're experiencing? That way, when Ron goes through the best practices, he can make sure he touches on those topic areas that are important to the room. And so I'll just open it up, and feel free to either unmute, or if you'd rather message in the chat, that works as well.
I'll start if you don't mind. I do not offer any tax services in my firm. We do not partner with anyone. We just refer people to different planners depending on the city they're in. But and the reason why we don't go beyond that is because logistically it seems to be quite complex, and we just don't want to cross the line of being responsible for those things, because I don't think at least our CRM or our systems are not set up to follow up on those things. So yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to see how other people do with the least amount of effort to be able to either refer it or have someone else do the tax preparation.
Got it. And then would you say that if that logistical kind of component was something that was not as insurmountable as it seems right now, do you see introducing that in-house service, or at least introducing the coordination of that service, even if you still outsource the actual tax preparation component of it? Do you think that would be beneficial to your clients?
Oh yeah, big time. I would love to do that. It's just we'll go crazy if we do it now with the infrastructure we have. But yeah, we'd love it.
Got it. Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Juan. Anyone else willing to share just their challenges that they're having with tax prep or the thought of doing tax prep?
This is Vivica. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So my scenario is slightly different because I work for an investment advisor and we handle the family office as well. So most of what we do is we have everything on the investments, right? So the tax preparers want it from us. So I don't necessarily create a tax return, but I provide all the information to them about the investments, the income, and the treatment, everything that's gone on with the investments. So that for us is where we call it a tax package. It's not actually the return, but we do work very closely with the tax preparers.
And are those tax preparers in-house at the family office, or are those outsourced tax preparers that you're working with?
Outside tax preparers.
Got it. Okay.
But we do have tax CPAs here to advise us for the best choices throughout about making decisions and such, which the people making the investment decisions, it's always fun because they don't really care always about the tax decisions, but we share the information all the same.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, there's a lot of people involved in the tax prep process, and the collaboration sometimes gets clunky. And so we'll share some best practices on that as well. Anyone else experience challenges with tax prep?
Some of the firms that responded actually said that they have 2+, 5+, 8+ people responsible for the tax preparation process. Would love to hear from somebody from a firm like that in terms of how that typically goes and how, if there are any challenges that you face and how you overcome them when it comes to coordinating that kind of load and delegating, handing off those processes between team members. We're also going to cover it as well. So if you don't want to speak up, that's totally fine.
I think Freddie said something in the. Oh, Z is actually trying to speak, but we can't hear you, Z.
No.
And Freddie said, I'm at a large wealth management firm. We mainly only complete tax returns when we serve as trustee for trust accounts. For our other agency clients, we work with third-party CPAs, like what the previous speaker mentioned. And Z is trying to speak.
Awesome.
Hey guys, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Well, I was just going to say, so we do a lot of tax planning. We do projections for almost all of our clients around the fourth quarter of the year. And we send our projections along with all of the investment statements, et cetera, to our CPAs that we work with. We've been having some challenges with our software last few years and have had to switch it out a couple of times. So I guess from a challenge standpoint, we're still struggling to find a good fit that'll allow us to efficiently do our projections and get a good sense of where our clients are from a tax perspective before year end. And we've talked a little bit about this in the past. I know there are some options that we're still reviewing, but anything that you guys may be able to share from that point of view would be great.
And just a quick question there: around how many clients do you do projections for in the fourth quarter every year?
So somewhere between 200 to 300.
Okay, so it's a fairly big project then. Understood. Well, what we're going to cover today is going to be cross-applicable, I think, to most of the projects that you do for clients on an ongoing basis. The focus that we're going to keep this on is on the tax preparation and filing process, only because, especially for the firms that do this for 200 or 300 clients, even if you don't do it in-house, even if you coordinate it with external providers and you start to assemble those documents, send out the tax packages, circle back, get the filed returns, we know that the logistical, I'd say, load that comes out of it can really tank your productivity in most other regards to your business. From if the focus is on capitalizing on growth momentum in the first quarter of the year, or dealing with that first surge of client check-in meetings, we've really seen that some of these challenges you guys identified can really crater your own capacity to service existing clients and new clients along the way. So Louis, if you wanted to touch on that right now, I know.
Yeah. So that basically leads us into one. Thank you everyone for sharing. That just gives us an idea of where the room is at and is really helpful before we dive into just presenting to you guys on best practices. So thank you. So the goal of the next part of the agenda here is Ron's going to take over and he's going to be sharing the best practices he's observed from working with our community of advisors. While we walk through the best practices, I really want everyone in the room to follow along and really think about how you're doing things differently. As I said before, we're here to learn from you guys as you're here to learn from us, and we're looking to improve at the same time. And so while Ron's going through and leading a couple of workshop activities, there'll be lots of time for questions, open floor questions and discussion at the end. And looking forward to run you guys through this.
And just to add on to that, as I go through, if you have some questions that come up as we're presenting, throw them in the chat. I do have it open on my screen beside me. And then I know that either myself or one of the other, one of us is probably going to read it out and get that answered for you even before the Q&A at the end. So.
And last thing is there's going to be a couple of links that we're going to ask you to access throughout the workshop. And so there will be, Tessa from Hubly will be posting those links in the chat, just so you can quickly access those if you don't want to type them in from the screen. Awesome. Well, I'll pass it over to you, Ron.
Great. Thanks, Louis. Yeah, you can go to the next slide here. Perfect. So I'm going to try to cover some of the best practices that we've observed with the dozens of firms that we've worked with. And again, this is fairly applicable to any large project that you do for all of your clients at a given time. It doesn't just have to focus on tax preparation, although that we have noticed that tax preparation is one of the larger projects that advisors kind of have to tackle every single year for all of their clients, or for a lot of their clients. In terms of this, as was mentioned before, it is tedious and it's very time consuming. It's a logistical nightmare for most. So we really recommend splitting this up into 4 distinct stages where you can actually tackle each component of that project on its own. So we're going to focus specifically on tax preparation, and then I'm going to unpack each of these stages with you through the activities that we have planned throughout this workshop. So if you want to go to the next stage, slide. The 2 major challenges that we're going to really be helping you guys overcome really stem from 2 main areas. First and foremost, it's trying to handle all of the steps of a project in one continuous workflow or checklist. We've seen more often than not when we work with new advisors as a part of our hands-on onboarding process at Hubly, they really come from a place where they're used to very rigid workflows in CRMs or in other systems that must be followed from A all the way through Z. And in that format, they really need to tackle every single element in that checklist for every client that they work with. We see one primary challenge that arises out of this is that it's hard to see where every client is at, and it's hard to identify those specific gates along the way. The gates that I mentioned before, that we recommend really splitting them out into these different stages to make it a little bit more manageable and present a bit of a dashboard as to which clients are flowing through which stage. We're going to tackle that in a second. The second major challenge here, Louis, if you want to go to the next slide, is that not having a system at all in place to track the progress. And we've seen that a lot of the responses have said that they don't have a system in place at all. And in this sense, it makes it very hard to delegate work efficiently, to break that larger process up into manageable stages and assign specific team members who are going to be responsible for moving that stage forward. For those of you that don't do tax preparation but still provide tax documents to external preparers and then have to focus on collecting the final returns after they get filed and archiving them for future years or for future tax planning activities, that still has a couple of breakpoints that you can use today's exercise to implement for yourselves as well. So these are the 2 main challenges. If we go to the next slide here, we're going to take a deeper dive into that tax organizer stage. This is that first breakpoint that we really observed helps teams tackle 200 or 300 tax organizers at a time. And in this case, it's sending out the tax organizers to the clients to collect back all the tax files from the past tax year. But in your case, it might be actually the opposite. It might be assembling all the tax documents on your side and sending them along to the client or to the tax preparer who you work with for that client. If we go to the next slide here, you're going to see that we've prepared this document that's available at this link here. It's t.ly/OUFZ, and you can actually scan it with your phone as well, or with your iPad, just by going to the camera and pointing it at a QR code. And I believe Tessa from Hubly is also going to be posting that in here. So just that link over there. If you go to the next tab here, Louis, the link will stay on the screen, I believe. There we go. And when you get to the shared Google Sheet, you should have the option to make a copy if you're logged in with Google at the moment. If you're not logged into a Google account, you can always use the download option to selections below and download as an Excel spreadsheet. The only caveat being that as an Excel spreadsheet, you may see slightly different formatting than what you're going to see on the screen here on the next slide.
Let's just give everyone a moment to find the workbook. It's going to be really helpful if you guys follow along the workbook while Ron works with the best practices. We found that's just a really good way to actually have a conversation about the activity.
Mm-hmm. And I just posted it in the chat as well. So.
And here, do you have like someone all the time going through this list and making sure that people are moving forward, or how like logistically, how does it work within the team?
Yeah, great question. So we're gonna jump into that right now. So Louis, if you want to go to the next slide here, again, the link is in the chat for anyone who hasn't had a chance to grab it yet. So you can always just copy that into your browser or just retype it in. It's a short link, only let's see, 7 characters long, or 8 characters long. Awesome. So typically we help advisors build this out in our product, which has additional functionality such as task assignments, reminders, descriptions, links, and a lot more than just the task names that you see in row 5 of the spreadsheet. But at the very basic level, we wanted to create something that we can share with you and that you can keep and use on the day-to-day without using Hubly. So how the spreadsheet works, we broke down the tax preparation process into 4 tabs. We're going to tackle them one at a time, starting with tax organizer tracker. And we provide us a couple of key elements in here that I'm going to review. First and foremost is your list of clients. We recommend adding all the household heads, as well as any spouses or dependents that you do the tax preparation process for, or you have tax documents for that you need to provide to an associated tax preparer. In column C, we listed a preference field. Now, this is applicable if you're doing the tax preparation for your clients, and some clients prefer a mailed filing versus a digital organizer. And we know that the process of sending these out is different, and preparing these digital versus paper organizers is different. So this is one of the important aspects that we've seen really work well for teams, is to have a way to track that preference in line in that tax organizer step. For those that don't do tax preparation, this might be, instead of a digital or mail preference, this might be a list of all the different external tax preparers that they work with, that you work with. So you may want to actually select the specific external CPA so that you have it available for you at a glance. And as you bring on a client, as you go through that initial onboarding, or as you go through one of those maintenance meetings and check-ins throughout the year, when you talk about their tax needs, how it's going to look like for the next year, we do recommend that you, as a follow-up step after that meeting, somebody on your team is responsible for updating that need, so you have it all in one place. Again, in this case, that will result in somebody on your team going into the spreadsheet and updating it here. In our product, it's a lot more streamlined. It's actually right as a part of that follow-up workflow. You can go ahead and update those preferences as well. So that's the preference. The rest is fairly easy to understand. Those are your tasks laid out vertically instead of horizontally, because your clients are going horizontal. And the reason that we lay these out vertically is because we actually want it to be easy to track, sort of like a progress bar, how far along every client is. And this, again, this helps break out that, or this helps us break away from that first challenge area of having those endless lists of tasks and making it very hard to see which client needs your attention. So if you were to use this in your practice, you can take a second to think about how you'd update that preference field to be something that would work for you, and then what your steps would look like. If you're preparing a tax return in-house, that might start out with a tax organizer preparation. You would look at the preference of mailed or digital, and you prepare either a paper or a digital organizer to send out to the client. If somebody on your team is responsible for that step, you can note that down right in the task name as well. The next step would be to send out that organizer. And we actually did break that apart into two distinct steps: tax organizer mailed and tax organizer sent digitally. And the reason being is that over the last 3 years of helping advisors with tax returns, we've noticed that almost nothing goes as planned. And more often than not, the clients that preferred mail organizers suddenly also wanted a digital one this year, or vice versa. And we've noticed that if you don't have that additional field, it just is another step that you have to worry about. It's another roadblock or barrier. So a lot of the times when we did the reflection exercise with our advisors, because we meet with you quarterly when you work with us, we reflected how tax season went. Some of the biggest learnings that I think we discussed with them was basically having those two options broken apart and available as tasks for every client. So you can quickly go in and say, yep, this has been done. Column G is the follow-up sent column. And more often than not, you're going to need to follow up on that tax organizer. And column H is a reminder sentence for specific missing documents. You can obviously customize this by adding additional columns and including other specific documents that you find that are missing. In Hubly, it's a little bit easier because you can actually do that without having to manipulate a spreadsheet and all the fun stuff that comes with that. But here you can also accomplish the same end of adding a note onto a cell for that specific client and writing down exactly what they're missing. And I say that because if you just added a column and added that we're missing the whatever tax form or the employer benefits form for a specific client, you would have that checkbox suddenly available for every single client in your list, which makes it a little bit more difficult to work with in a spreadsheet because it's not mutually exclusive to every client and customizable to every client, like Hubly is. But in this case, you would be able to right-click on the cell where the checkbox is in column H, and then write down a list of the specific documents that are missing. Again,
Ron, question from Vivia while you were talking through there. She was wondering, what would you recommend is best practice, sending the file securely with a password, or what have you seen done from other advisors? Just want to make sure that got caught.
Yeah, good question. So when it comes to collecting the tax forms, so when it comes to collecting tax forms from your clients, we don't typically the tax organizer doesn't have sensitive information. So saving it as a zip and putting a password onto it would be more than enough. But then when you're collecting those files back, from what we've seen over the last few years, especially the cybersecurity threats that have been coming up, we really recommend not including those in the email. So really paying for additional software which provides a secure upload portal and sufficiently encrypts and protects that portal is really important, because as you can imagine, those tax documents are very sensitive. They contain a lot of PII, and it's one compromised email away from identity theft in that case. In Hubly, we do provide you with an encrypted one-way Dropbox that lets you handle this kind of upload. But we know that there's a lot of other software available as well, which some can get pretty pricey for just that functionality, but they do protect your client information adequately.
So another follow-up question here from Freddie, Ron, is they usually send the tax docs to the client CPA directly. The client's generally not involved in that prep process. Mm-hmm. And Freddie's just asking, can the sheet be amended to include the CPA's contact information and how they're communicating with them directly, or maybe adding 2 rows, one for the client, one for the CPA? What have you seen in those scenarios?
For sure. So what I would actually do, Freddie, would be update that preference field to say preferred CPA or client CPA. And then instead of making a list like I did of just the 2 options, mail organizer or digital organizer, you can do a little bit of Excel magic and just make a new tab that has a running list of all the CPAs. And then in that running list, that's where I'd organize and keep their contact information, If you have a secure Dropbox link that they prefer to use, keep that in there as well, where you organize all the clients that work with them. And then that way you're not overcrowding each spreadsheet, each tab in the spreadsheet. You have one tab that has the latest and most up-to-date information. That also is going to help you avoid rekeying your CPA's info as it changes. Yeah, you're welcome. Also, feel free to unmute your mic if you want to follow up to a question that we answer here. Perfect. So again, as Freddie pointed out, and as I mentioned earlier, you can take a moment to think about and add some notes on your own version of this spreadsheet of how you could use it for your own practice. If you do tax preparation, it's probably a little bit too late for the tax organizer step, but it's very fresh in your minds. You've just went through it already. So what I'd always recommend is when you've just went through a process, take a second and actually write it out. In this case, you can write them out as the tasks that go horizontally along row 5 to basically reflect what you did in order to prepare and send out and then collect back and remind and follow up, etc. for the tax organizer for every client. Doing that even here means that next year when you come back to preparing for your next tax season, you're going to have a starting point and you're not going to be starting from scratch. It's going to be an iterative process and approach rather than kind of starting from zero every time. If you don't do tax preparation and you work with an external CPA, as Freddie mentioned, you can go ahead and actually make that additional tab. And I'm going to actually jot down a note because on future sessions that we run like this, I will also provide that option because now we know that that is a need as well. So perfect. And so for those that don't do tax preparation, you may have a couple of assembly steps that you do, a couple of, whether working with specific vendors on getting the tax summaries from them, or preparing your own tax forms for the investments that you manage. Also, in some cases, the fees that clients pay you might be tax deductible, and there's some tax summaries there that you may provide them as well. So any of those elements can be listed as tasks running across row 5, and then you can always then check off which of these you've done for each of your clients, and you can just skip over the ones that aren't applicable. One of the most important things, no matter what tool you pick to use as a workflow tool, is flexibility. You don't want to be locked into having to complete every single step for every single client, because every client's going to have their own unique needs. Awesome. Louis, here's going to next tab here. I'm going to really move forward into the preparation and scheduling step, which is that next big, I'd say, breakpoint that you move clients into once you've received those tax organizers back and you're ready to start scheduling that review meeting and preparing the return. You go to the next slide again. Again, we're going to be using that same spreadsheet. You don't have to go to the link again if you have it open already. But if you don't and you want to join in, you can go ahead to that link, and it's also, again, posted in the chat. We're going to be on tab 2 of this document. So on tab 2, you're going to see this in front of you. It's going to be the preparation and scheduling tracker. Column B is going to autofill based on the client names that you've entered into tab 1 if you're using Google Sheets. If you're using Excel, you may need to change a couple settings. I'm not as familiar because we use Google here, but it should work just the same. When you, if you use an external tax CPA or tax preparer, you can also insert a column between column B and C, and then do the same kind of hot linking back to column to the appropriate preference column on that first tab. It's a fairly straightforward spreadsheet, no crazy magic involved, just a layout that we've seen work well, and we've obviously adopted it for the constraints of Excel or Google Sheets from what we've already helped many firms build out and use in Hubly. In this step, again, we recommend breaking down the actual preparation process. And for us here, we amalgamated that to just a draft return ready. But for your team, and your firm, you may actually have some specific steps that would make sense for you to break up the preparation of that draft return. This is really helpful if you want to be able to delegate that out to a paraplanner or a administrative staff member, because what we've heard a lot is that at least the first step there could be to assemble all the documents in the right order, because that is 80% of the work, is that assembly, and from there the actual data entry part as well, in order to prepare that return. If you do want to break it out, you could again insert a couple of additional columns between column B and C, and then break out the specific tasks that you would like yourself or somebody else on your team to follow. Even if it's just you alone, we highly recommend breaking that out. And the reason being, it's like reading a book. You want to be able to put a bookmark. And so if you're working through a list of 30 or 300 clients, you're not going to get to the draft return ready stage for every single one of them. For some, you might only get to the assemble documents in the right order stage. For others, you might get partially through the data entry stage. Breaking this one task apart into the process that you actually follow will help you be able to put a bookmark in it when you run out of time, inevitably, at the end of the day. It's also going to make it a lot easier to delegate that work, really tackling both challenge 1 and challenge 2. And from there, we've included some of the default tasks that we've seen a lot of teams follow. That as soon as the draft return is ready, you're typically ready to contact the client and send them the review meeting scheduling email. Next step is typically to follow up, or the client schedules that meeting. And again, we demonstrated here that the breaking apart of what could have just been a client review meeting scheduled step, because this lets you really track that distinct progress that you make on every client. And yes, you would have to go in here and update that as you go along. But again, using this as a work planning tool rather than a archival tool will actually really help add efficiency and productivity back into your day, because you're not going to be working from memory. You're not going to be waking up in the middle of the night thinking that you're forgetting something. And most importantly, you're not going to be looking into 3 or 4 different software or different places to see where you left off with each of these tasks. It takes habit change to use a system, any system, spreadsheet or Hubly, in order to manage your processes better. But at the end of the day, by creating these kind of playbooks for these different projects that you do, it will really allow you to eventually grow your team, to grow your book of business, and most importantly, to save your time and save yourself from having to check many, many places as your software suite grows. Awesome. So from here, you can again take a second to jot down some notes over the adjustments that you'd like to make to the spreadsheet. If you don't do tax preparation, then in your case, it might be scheduling the review once the tax draft is ready from the CPA. If that's a service that you provide and you help the client review that prepared draft and match it back to the tax plan that you assembled in the previous quarter, then that could be something that you adjust this specific tab for. We know that your service is typically very high touch, especially in that first quarter. So that's a really good way to tie together the first surge of client check-ins with the tax preparation process, and have it so that if you don't do tax preparation, you pass along the tax documents to CPA, and once the draft is ready, you set up that relationship so that they provide the draft back to you or back to the client, and the client knows that they can come to you to get it reviewed at that next check-in meeting this quarter before eventually filing. And again, that involves tracking multiple moving parts, so we do recommend documenting those moving parts into this sheet. I saw a question in there from earlier about secure websites. Louis, I think that was in response to the answer that we were talking about with collecting of data. What I meant by secure websites or secure file upload systems would be ones such as Dropbox potentially, but there's also much more expensive and much more secure options. where you're able to generate a unique vault or a unique client folder. You're able to invite a client into that folder, and that client is able to basically use that as a workspace to upload files, as well as download files that you provide to them. The idea behind that is that it's password protected and it's encrypted, so that if a file basically gets uploaded into there and one of your emails gets compromised, as has happened to a couple of firms that we've actually worked with, then those files aren't compromised as well, because whoever compromised your email would still have to go in and have the encryption key or the password to your document drive. And just word of advice, don't make it the same password. Use a password manager and make it something that's impossibly difficult to guess.
Thank you for clarifying. That was my question, and I missed your follow-up question. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries at all. And if you have any questions about any of this, at the very end, you will see a link to schedule a strategy call with us. Even if Hubly's not the right fit for you at this time, if you wanted some advice on setting up tax preparation processes or document collection, or just discuss about how we've seen others do it, we're here to help. We're here to share knowledge. We aren't here to sell software, as you can tell. And our job really, we see it as helping advisors who are forward thinking and looking to really move their practice in the future, add higher touch services, share that knowledge and learn from one another. That's what we do for our clients, and that's what we can do for you as well from this webinar. And that also applies if you're watching this recorded and not live. So. Perfect. Any questions about this specific stage? I know it was fairly straightforward, but really just building on top of what we discussed last time. The idea being here, the main idea behind the prep and scheduling is you want to break it apart into pieces to make it easy to see where you left off, and more importantly, to make it easy to delegate to other team members so that you're not shooting your own capacity. You can still be going out and working on your business while your team is working in your business and moving these clients forward. This also provides you with one place to just glance and see how things are progressing, so that you don't need to call a meeting every single time that you want to have a quick session about which clients are ready for their scheduled check-in or not. Awesome. Let's move it forward, just because we're going to be running out of time soon. And if you do have to hop off to prepare for a client meeting, you can hop off, and I know that the session is being recorded, so it will be provided as well. The second to last stage, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say thank you for that.
Yeah, no, our pleasure. And we'll try to streamline in the future as well, so we don't go right to the end here. The second to last stage here is the review and finalization activity. And if we go into this next tab, again, this is going to be the stage of once the client review meeting is complete, any requested changes can be documented. And again, we use a placeholder in column E, and you can add it as a comment onto the cells for specific clients. So for example, 6E, 7E, 8E, you can right click and add a note as to what changes need to happen before that review, that document gets filed. If you're not doing tax preparation and you're collaborating with an external tax preparer, that could still be useful for you if after doing that review and check-in, there are some changes and some inconsistencies that need to be addressed. And we left a couple of additional fields open here in row 5, in case you wanted to customize this and detail the specific topics that you want to cover in that tax review meeting with the client, since you already have them either on the phone or in person. Again, the main idea here is that you get to break this down, because not every client is going to be going through this stage at the same time. Some are going to be ahead of the curve, some are going to be dragging their feet in the document collection. So you really want to be able to see which clients need to be moved forward, and which clients need to be, which clients are well on track to getting everything filed by the deadline. Again, in the spreadsheet, it's not as intuitive to set reminders and other things for moving clients forward. We did adapt this and adopt this from the implementation in Hubly, where we do have automated reminders and other sequential notifications, which really help you avoid these sorts of steps and clients from falling through the cracks long term, especially in a very deadline-driven process like tax preparation and filing. But in this case, you can still use this. You just need to check in with it on a semi-regular basis. And again, get in the habit of updating it as you complete that meeting, as changes are required, and not writing those changes down on a sticky note or a notepad or an Outlook note. So you really have that one place to look when it comes to everything to do with tax preparation. Keeping this as a shared document will also make sure that your entire team is in sync. And the worst thing that can happen is if you have multiple versions of this document diverging. We want to avoid that. Awesome. And then last but not least here, just on the next slide here, Louis, we're gonna finish off with the filing, billing, and archiving step. Let's go 2 slides forward here. And yeah, just one more, perfect. This is the 4th tab in that spreadsheet and the last one as a part of this workbook. And so for this, we really just try to format this to, what's the right way to put it? To help you have a process to track which clients the returns have been filed, sent, signed, and filed, which clients your team has gotten to organizing their tax documents in your client folders so that you have access to them in future years. And whether you're preparing the return in-house or you have an external CPA that you work with and maybe you have consolidated billing for, if there's a billing step involved, this would also be the place to track. And we broke that apart into 2 steps so that maybe your administrative assistant could prepare the bill and then you would be the one that sends it. Or maybe they do both and you can just observe and see which clients have paid and which clients need a follow-up. Again, take this process and really customize it to follow the way that you want to do billing and filing. Right now is actually very timely for this because we haven't reached the filing stage yet, and especially in Texas, there's an extension. So what I really do recommend is after this call, while it's still fresh, take a look through and jot down those tasks that would make sense for you. Take a look at what you want to do after the returns get filed. And even if you don't do tax preparation, maybe you want to follow up with each client's individual CPAs, get those returns back, and then organize them into your tax folders so that when it comes to tax planning in Q4, you have a place to look. Awesome, team. Well, let's go to the next slide here, Louis. And the next step here is the open floor for questions and answers. I know we're running a little bit tight on time, so maybe we'll limit this to 5 minutes. And then if you have any other questions, the last slide is going to show you our direct contact information. So you can feel free to reach out, set up that quick call, and we would love to chat about this with you and go offline.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ron. Really appreciate that. That was very informative.
My pleasure.
Did anyone have any questions about the best practices Ron has shared for the tax preparation process or overall thoughts that they'd like to share? Feedback is also welcome.
I have a question, sorry.
No problem.
I deal with this a lot. It's that time of year, sorry. One of the tax preparers we work with, it's EY, and they have helped us use some robotics to get data that we need for our clients. They tried to even encourage us to use that robotics process for 1099 gathering from brokers. That just seems, I just said no because that seemed, we have too many brokers. Like it wouldn't be consistent. It'd be too hard to maintain, much easier to just manually grab. And you had mentioned robotics earlier, so I thought I'd ask that.
By robotics, do you mean automated, basically, collection emails? Is that what it is?
We use robotics to go log into secure websites for investments and gather K1s and data. And they wanted us to use it for the banks and brokers as well. And I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to create separate logins that I had to worry about and maintain, et cetera. So we're just manually gathering that. But I didn't know if you have some tips about how to gather that, because we've got a ton of statements to gather. So if you had some efficiency ideas on that.
Definitely. So I'm not familiar with robotics, unfortunately, but what I've seen work really well for data gathering, and I see where you're coming from as well, because that list is so endless that you'd be almost spending as much time automating that as just going out and fetching it, and then it changes next year, so then you have to redo it all over again. What we've seen work really well is have a running list of the different types of files that you need. That can be a part of the document collection workflow or a stage in this workbook. And how we help with that, we typically help advisors build out a long workflow of all the different types of tax documents that they need. And then we set conditions on those tasks so that when a client starts the document collection workflow, our software can evaluate which conditions are met for that client. And then we'll include only the document collection steps that are relevant to their types of accounts. And then we'll ignore all the other ones so that you're not bombarded with an endless list for every client. You can achieve the same result with a spreadsheet. You would just need a way to be able to access a summary of accounts and just do that. I guess it wouldn't be automated. That's the only problem, is that you'd have a long list, and then you'd need your team to spend a couple extra minutes to go client by client, see what the types of accounts are, and then use their best judgment to identify which documents would not be necessary based on that information. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I hope that was helpful.
Just in essence of time, so I know we're close to the end of the hour here, and I know everyone has close stops. I think we can end the webinar there. I had one ask for the audience, and you can always follow up with additional questions afterwards. Is everyone can go to this link. We do have a quick feedback survey. This is just going to help us further improve this workshop. As I said, our ultimate goal is to constantly improve and share better best practices. And so if everyone can go into this link and just quickly fill out the feedback survey, I promise you it's only 3 minutes, but it will really help our team. I'll also be sending a follow-up email to everyone part of the webinar today with the survey link as well. And in addition to that, you're more than welcome to schedule a 30-minute strategy call with me. I've made my calendar available. You can go to myhubly.com/strategy call. I'll also be emailing this link to everyone afterwards. I would love to schedule a call just to get to know you better. We're really excited to be working with the FPA Houston chapter this year, and you will see lots more of Hubly over the coming months. But if you want to connect before that, schedule a call with me. We can chat about your workflow challenges, if there are other areas you're interested in learning about, and we can decide if Hubly might be a good fit for you or not. But either way, I love making new friends in the industry, so would love to meet.
Yeah, and we did open up a bunch of availability just for you guys. So you can always use your phone, again, on the camera to scan that QR code, and that's going to lead you to the Calendly. Super easy to see what time works, and slot in a time to chat.
And anyone who's watching this webinar recording afterwards, feel free to do all of the same things as well. So I just wanted to make sure that's also on the recording.
Awesome. Again, apologies for the rush at the end there. We had some great questions at the beginning, and we kind of flipped the script in the Q&A. I think next time we'll adjust and have the ongoing Q&A as we did today.
Awesome. Just want to say thank you to Juan and Jason and Melissa for having us here today. We really do appreciate it, and we'd love to partake in any future advisor exchanges.
Hey, thank you guys for helping us with this great topic. I know it's one of my favorites because I'm just lost on tax planning as well. So thank you for the great information. And this will be recorded, so we'll make it available to everybody who attended. And again, it was a great presentation. Thank you.
Our pleasure, guys. Thank you all.